great to be here with you all. Thank you so much for coming to this session. We're looking forward to sharing what our experiences are in Miami, what we've learned, things that we're faced with that are challenging, and then also to hear from you, to share out in small groups, and hopefully leave this session with some ideas for what we can take back to our respective places. So let's get started. Yeah. All right, so just to let you all know kind of like the structure of today's presentation, I'm going to do a brief intro about the Pérez Art Museum Miami. And then each of my colleagues here will talk about and highlight a specific program that they manage at the museum. After that, we'll break into small groups where we'll all get a chance to share with one another what we're working on, and then hopefully work through some challenges together that we're currently in the midst of at our respective institutions and organizations. So that's the plan for today. Yeah, and feel free, get up, drink water, make yourself as comfortable as possible. Okay, so who are we? History. So officially, our museum is known as the Pérez Art Museum Miami, or PAMM, but the exact name on paper is the George M. Pérez Art Museum of Miami-Dade County. And I wanted to highlight that because we are in Miami-Dade County. County government in South Florida is very important, as is city government. Our local politics influence us greatly, for better or worse. The museum is a staff of about 60 part-time and full-time workers, with an additional 40 to 60, it varies, of contracted workers that range from our security company that does our gallery security, that's a contracted company, to our maintenance teams that clean and maintain the building, that's another contracted company, as well as cultural workers that are contracted as well, also within our department or for special projects and things like that. We're a modern and contemporary art museum dedicated to collecting and exhibiting international art of the 20th and 21st centuries. We were founded in 1984 as an exhibiting organization with no collection of our own. We've gone through a few different name changes to get to the name we have today. Started as the Center for Fine Arts, became Miami Art Museum, and voila, here we are, Pérez. So today, the museum owns a little more than 3,100 works of art. It's like right around there, which actually isn't a lot in some cases. When I go to some conferences or connect with other colleagues, I'm like, it's only 3,000 works, They're like, we have 20,000, blah, blah, blah. So, we're small, we're growing, but we've been, I would even say, aggressively collecting within the last 6 years since the director Franklin Sermons came on. We've added to the collection, I'm gonna say, about 1,000 works of art in the time that he's come on. So it's been incredible, and a lot of work by artists of color, which is, of course, awesome. So our focus is on presenting art from the US Latinx experience, the African diaspora, the Caribbean, and Latin America. Our demographics. I bring this up because we are in the States, and as you know, race is important to us for many reasons. That is a whole nother presentation that we got into last night. We're like, okay, that's another presentation. But I bring up our demographics so you know where we're coming from, what we're about, and why we're so crazy. So, demographics of Miami-Dade County. Race, asterisk, is a social construct. Racism is real, but this is how we define ourselves, how we get funding, et cetera, et cetera. So Miami-Dade County, Hispanic or Latino, 69.1%, 65.6% of that group identify as white Hispanic. Black or African American, 17.4%, white, 13.6%, Asian, 1.6%, 2 or more races, 1.3, Indigenous North American, 0.3, Indigenous Pacific Islander, 0.1. So these are the stats from the latest census in 2010, I believe. Okay. Missions. Yes, we have more than one. So we're going to talk about the museum's mission and then our education department mission. We felt it was important to kind of distill what was in the museum's larger mission as a department and then figure out how does that specifically apply to us. So the museum's mission is to be a leader in the presentation, study, interpretation, and care of international, modern, and contemporary art while representing and cherishing the unique diversity of Miami-Dade. Through our exhibitions and programs, we aim to encourage everyone to see art as an incentive for genuine human interaction, communication, and exchange. Awesome, right? So we're like, yeah, we're about it. We're gonna do this. So our education manifesto / mission, we started out kind of building this as a manifesto. But then we realized that is a very loaded word, right? Especially in Miami. You know, we have folks coming from different regions with governments that used the term manifesto in negative ways. So we thought, okay, maybe that's not the best word for us. So we distilled it to mission. So our mission as a department, we have these points that we've wanted it to be clear, to really separate out what we're saying and to give us something to like really work towards and better ourselves at. So through the active and we pulled also from our mission statement. That's our museum mission statement that inspired us. So through the active and personalized interpretation of modern contemporary art, the education department seeks to engage and inspire our diverse communities in South Florida and beyond. We acknowledge the experiences of people representing all ages, genders, abilities, and cultural backgrounds. We strive to create programs that reflect our diverse communities and the issues relevant to their lives. As educators, we encourage critical thinking and inquiry through equitable and accessible experiences. We understand that learning is an ongoing process and commit ourselves to being open to new ideas, experiences, and change. We recognize art as a universal language and a human right that can help us to create a kinder and more empathetic world. So, yeah. We read it when, you know, those days you're like, what's it all for? You can read this and you're like, that's what it's for. So as a department, our values distill down to these really two fundamentals, that art is a human right. Sounds simple, it is. But what does that mean to actually implement it, to live it, to practice it, to do that work? And then the value of shared authority, collaboration in the truest sense. We have to work together. We can't do this work without each other. This is not a one-person museum. This is an immense group effort, whether you're a team of 20 or a team of 2. Collaboration, sharing authority, really thinking about what it is to work in partnership with someone, to work in partnership with your community. This is like a fundamental aspect of the work we do as a department. And we're trying to spread that out to the museum too. That's part of our goal. But, let's not ignore the facts. We're in Miami, we're in the States. We are the Caribbean, we consider ourselves so, but sometimes maybe we're not considered. So what are the privileges that we have? What are the systemic challenges that we face? So we are based within the American empire. We have to be straight up about that. We are resource rich at the detriment of others, right? We have access to that. We have access to private and government funding. We get $4 million from our county government every year. Wow. Right? In the United States, that's rare. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Right now, our institution is operating at about $15 million a year operating budget. So $4 million is not just a little bit of money, but we always want more. But for a county government to be giving an arts institution that much money every year is incredible. And actually, every year, the museum's like, what if it goes away? What if it goes away? So we're actively working right now to find other ways to create a revenue stream or an endowment that will bring in that money. Because with the politics of Florida, we're on a timer. Also, something that we look at as a plus is our geographic location as a city of the global South. we are right in the crux of what it means to be a city of the South in the States. The South for the region, we're in the Caribbean, but we're also South for the world. So it's a great place to be. I look at it as a plus. I have it right there. Some systemic issues though, and challenges. So we are based within the American empire, right? So all of the great things that brings us in terms of resources, but again, at the detriment of others. And that conflicts with our values. And then when that conflict arises, we are challenging the status quo and their values with our programming, with our ideals, with our mission. You saw our missions, you heard them. Like, how does that align with empire, empire goals and ideals? And then the last challenge that we think about a lot, it's broad, but the growing economic, social, and political disparities in Florida specifically, which is a hot mess of a state, but I love it. Miami-Dade County, which is changing drastically. Like, we're all hoping we have places to live when we get back there for many reasons, economic, climate, yada, yada. So these are the challenges in some of our programs. You'll hear a little bit more about that. I think that's the last slide, and I pass it on to, which one is it? Yeah, okay, Anita.
Hi, everyone. Yep. Recording. My name is Nita Bram. I'm the Associate Director of Adult and Public Programs at PAMM, and I've had the distinct pleasure of working at the museum for approaching 9 years now. And so I've been able to work on a variety of programs over those years. I'm going to do a brief but deep dive into just one of those programs, which is Thursdays at PAMM. I will say that this is a newer, more recent title of a program that has come and gone over the years at the museum. It used to be PAMM Free Community Nights. Now it's Thursdays at PAMM. Basically, it all stems from Thursdays are the only evening where we are open late to the public. We're open from 11 a.m. until 9 p.m. on Thursdays. It's a day when we really try to get people who work jobs during the day to the museum, because not everybody has the privilege to visit when they're working during the day. So Thursdays at PAMM is a initiative in which we're really trying to invite new communities, and I want to be cautious and general in the way that I'm using the word community. We recognize that we have many communities in Miami, and really Thursdays are just a way to reach as many of them as possible. That's how I think of it when we're programming it together. We're really trying to make sure that the museum is a space that people see something for them in, and so we're trying to make sure that there's something for everyone at the museum, which is a difficult task. Modern and contemporary art is not for everyone, but we're trying to make it an accessible space with as few barriers to entry as possible, and with programs that appeal to different audiences. So that's really the goal of Thursdays at PAMM. And I'll share briefly just this is what some of the goals are and some of the successes that we've seen over the past year-ish that we've been leading this program, of course, in a post-pandemic world. We offer everything, every program on our terrace is entirely free and open to the public. While the galleries are not on Thursday evenings, anything that we offer in an outdoor space is. So live music, yoga, films, I'm blanking on the rest, but anything of that variety that's on the terrace is entirely free. Figure drawing. Yeah, as I'm up here, of course, in the spotlight, I'm blanking on half of the things that we do. And so we have reached many new audiences by way of offering things that you wouldn't necessarily typically attend at a modern and contemporary art museum. We've reached new audiences. We've increased attendance drastically so on these evenings. And that, of course, does trickle into the museum. People will go inside and visit the galleries by way of attending a yoga class or drawing or just being there for happy hour to grab. We have a beautiful terrace with views of Biscayne Bay. So it's a really great place to meet friends and have as a community space. And it also has provided expanded opportunity for partnership, which is, I think, really what we all as a team and as our, from our situation in Miami, really are it's our bread and butter in fewer words. We would be nobody without the partners that we work with on these Thursday evenings, and that's the best way to reach community is by extending out beyond your own team to invite partners, to invite their audiences and their constituents to the museum. So we found that that's what's most successful, is reaching out to partners throughout Miami, other organizations, to get their constituents to the museum and make sure that they know that they're welcome always, not just on Thursdays at PAMM. I will say, we work at a large museum. We have a large budget. We're at this really unique position, but it doesn't come without challenges, like any good thing. I will say, while we don't have, it doesn't sound like we have financial resources as a museum because we have a large budget. We struggle within the education department in that there's a large fluctuation in financial resources for programs like these. So one year you might have a budget for Thursdays at PAMM, and the next year it's much smaller, it's reduced, or it's totally gone if you don't get enough grants or corporate sponsorships for it. So we do always have to kind of be super malleable and scaling programs up and down based on what those budgets end up being each year, which we're told usually right at the beginning of the year, as we're already starting the programs. So to be fully transparent, that's usually something that we learn like as it's happening, and we're learning that right now. So that's another big challenge that I didn't put as a bullet, but should have. Of course, staffing resources. We do have a large staff, but we're not as big as we were pre-pandemic by any means, especially in the education department. And so there are very few people to rely on if you can't be there, or if you become ill, or just can't make it that Thursday. So even for us to come here, I had to have our one staff member who was available cover for me to do Thursday at PAMM so that I could be here. So we do still have staffing resource issues because we do this every single Thursday of the year without pause, which is a lot of programs. And the other challenges are the community comes out for these programs and they're super excited about it, and they're like, when's the next yoga class? But we're definitely pushing the boundaries of a traditional museum space, and that when there's yoga, it affects people who are dining at our restaurant, which is a very lovely, schmancy museum restaurant. But it doesn't really is that my timer? Okay. I was like, I can stop. It makes people uncomfortable, or it doesn't really pair well with what they envisioned for that evening at the museum. So getting everybody on board and comfortable with doing crazy new things at the museum is admittedly one of the harder parts and one of the bigger challenges. And then by way of doing these super big, visible, great partnerships, there's a super increase in the influx of proposals and partnerships from others, which is great. This is a great challenge to have. But then with the staffing and resources we have, how do you reach everybody? If it were up to me, I would want to say yes to every single thing that comes into my inbox. But how do you meet that influx of ideas and willingness to partner and make sure that everybody feels heard and seen when we might not necessarily have calendar space, or we have things set 4 months, 6 months in advance? How do you make sure that everybody feels like their proposal is being heard, and how do you find a place for it? Is another challenge that I'm actively working through right now today with all of you. And getting new attendees inside the museum, that's always difficult. People who see the museum as a space for them will go back time and time again for yoga or live music, but getting people who don't feel like it's a space for them into the museum is always going to be a challenge. And we say that we're trying to create something for everybody, but I do think that that's really difficult, and you do have to meet people where they are to find out what they're looking for on an evening like this in the first place. So that's something that we can definitely do more of. And then, of course, just really blatant things like continued barriers to entry. While our programming and everything that we offer on the terrace is free, it still costs money to park and get to downtown Miami, which is a very difficult place to get to, especially on a Thursday evening or any evening. And then, of course, food and drink costs. We're not, I would not say at all that we're a cheap place to visit if you want to do anything other than attend the yoga, figure drawing, film, et cetera, that we have out there. So we are able to offer all of our things for free and all of our goodies for free like we did here today, but that doesn't mean that everything at the museum is free. So we are always asking for more. We want more free days back at the museum to get people into the galleries for free, and that's something that we're constantly having to push with leadership and people inside the museum. So I'll leave it at that because I don't want to go too long and I want to get to our other programs, but I just wanted to kind of like lay that groundwork in terms of our adult audiences at the museum to talk about things that are really great and the challenges we have in working through these programs. So I think I will pass it over. You want me to click for you? You have this?
Yeah, that'd be great if you could.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yami, manager of youth tour programs. So my purview is really our K-12 audiences. I supervise and manage our school programs and some outreach programs. And today I want to highlight one of our outreach programs, PAMM in the Neighborhood. This is a program that runs during the summer. And what we do during this 7 weeks when this is offered is that we actually are able to go out into the community, right? And I'm using that because we've had, I think, a lot of conversations about problematizing what we mean when we talk about community. But this is really an opportunity for us to go beyond the museum walls and into
challenges within it without to execute, to actually have that interaction. And one of them is a matter of messaging and marketing. It really, I think during the keynote, it was very sort of touching for me, and I think sort of a bit of a shocking moment where I was like, why didn't I think of that? But hearing about how Bahamians talk about sort of what tourism is, and sort of constant, never-ending performance that it is, and I felt so much of Miami in that. That resonated so deeply with me. And in the programming that we do, who are we serving? Is it the people waiting to get on the cruises for an hour or two? Or is it the 2 million people that live on the other side of I-95, right? Because there are multiple Miami, but you can slice it down the middle, and you have this beautiful city that hugs a bay with white sands, and then you have the global south within the global north, right? So how do we get that message out to those people, right? So is it just social media? Right? What good is a free day if the only people that are coming are the people that live in the condos across the street? So how do we get over that mental and physical hurdle of where the museum is? And reaching those diverse communities, right? So you see we have programming in 3 languages, which is a decision our department has made, and it's a burden that we carry happily, despite the fact that the rest of the museum still feels that we should only produce content in 2 languages. Haitian Creole. I'll move on to, and I'm going to echo a lot of what Anita mentioned as well. There are budgetary and labor constraints, right? For someone who's in charge of serving the community, I'm like, do you want me to serve the community with this? Do you want me to serve 2.6 million people with this budget? I'm like, okay, right? So I'm clearly a miracle worker. And so is my team, right? Like, I'm like, and as well, post-pandemic, we're still in a rebuilding phase, right? Marie hears it every week at my one-on-one. I'm like, running a threadbare operation, right? If one person calls in sick, well, guess what we don't have today? Art making, right? In the galleries, and it's so those are some of the day-to-day issues that crop up. Anita also mentioned scalability, right? So I think this goes hand in hand with the idea that as we are now moving into this post-pandemic sort of realm, we are now getting numbers and attendance, and on an average second Saturday, museum attendance is going to be around 3,000 people that are going through the front door, because there are plenty of people that stay outside and do the art making and never go inside, which is fine, right? So how am I supposed to give 3,000 art kits away when I've got a budget of $2,000 for the entire day, right? So it's but it's also having to live within those constraints, right? What I don't want to do is give out like paper and colored pencils. So that's why you guys got stickers and a little bit more. But again, it's sort of like we as this quote unquote, and this is another problematic word, flagship institution, right? We take it upon ourselves to really, if we're going to believe that art is a human right, we're going to honor that belief. Next, again, buy-in from the institution. Right? So we have to fight an internal battle against other departments who don't see the value, who don't see the monetary, the dollars and cents. It's like, well, what is this really worth? And just to give you an anecdote, there are many a second Saturday where I am planning this event, putting out art for the public, been working on it for months, but the museum's been bought out for an event. We have a wedding, we have a DJ, we have this, we have that, and my $1 million view is actually being sold, right? And it's instructing people. It's like, there's a reason why I want that space, because the public deserves this. The public deserves this venue and this. We ennoble the public by offering them these grand public spaces, which are so few and far between in Dade County. Because if you're on the water, you're usually in the wind or visiting, right? Another big thing, and this is very top of mind for me as well, is accessibility and universal design. And it was really wonderful hearing our colleagues at History Miami talk about this as well. This is sadly something that we're trying to build back, especially after the pandemic, but we're doing the best we can with the limited resources that we have. So just to give you a bit of an insight into the other things that I manage, I also manage all of our audio tours and our digital exhibitions. So how do we contextualize the artwork on your phone? So we write visual descriptions for people who are blind or people who have low vision, and we record it in English and in Spanish. And that's a heavy lift for every new exhibition that comes up with a team of 2. And lastly, I put intersectional sensitivity because, and I think this more has to do from like a planning perspective, from a planning vantage point. When I sit with Marie and we plan out our year's worth of programming, we think it's really important to highlight things like Women's History Month, right? To highlight things like Haitian Heritage Month, to highlight Black History Month. That all of these things that, some would have you believe weaken our state and our nation actually enrich us. So, always having an eye and the pulse of that in everything that we do.